Hi, I'm Dean Crisp. Welcome to Straight Talk on Leadership. This is what we'd like to say is the no BS zone, where we give you leadership tips, ideas, and practical suggestions to help you become a top leadership performer. Our goal is simple: help you become the best version of yourself and reach your highest potential as a leader. So sit back, turn up the volume, get ready to change your life.
I'm joined this week by Dan Richard, who is former Lieutenant Colonel with the Massachusetts State Police. And Dan's with us, and he's going to help us kick off this podcast year of 2026 going. Dan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well, Dean. Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and the LHLN family.
Yeah, we've kind of had some changes this year in 2025. If everybody knows, Hurricane Helene hit in 2024, and it just wiped our whole area out for a number of months. And to be honest with you, people around here are just now getting back into really kind of the swing of things after almost a year and a half. So we're glad to be back on the podcast. Dan, if you'll take just a minute, kind of introduce the folks to you in terms of your background and the history of your career a little bit.
Certainly. As you said, I was a Lieutenant Colonel with the Massachusetts State Police, so starting with the end, that's where I finished up last April 6th after 30 years with the Massachusetts State Police. I was a road trooper, a canine handler. I've touched about every base there is to touch up here in Massachusetts. The State Police in Massachusetts is a full-service type of state police agency where we do the patrol and detectives and every specialty you can think of. Prior to that, I was a local police officer in my hometown of Leominster, Massachusetts, and I had a whole other career before any of that. I was in the Army for 10 years on and off, both as an enlisted person and as a commissioned officer in the Military Police Corps.
Well, not only that, Dan, you have an educational background. I know you've had a lot of pursuits with your education, and certainly going from trooper to lieutenant colonel in an organization the size of the Mass State Police. I mean, that's something to really be proud of. And so also you teach for LHLN. You know, you're one of our main instructors that goes on the road and takes this message forward. And actually, you and I met in a master leader course. Well, I don't know. Did we know each other before then?
I believe I took the intentional leader first. And what happened was another lieutenant colonel on the Mass State Police, Brian Connors, took your master class. He came back and shared his notes with us up on the Division of Investigative Services deck, and it was lightning in a bottle after that. As far as I was concerned, I took the intentional, the master. I took all three actually with you up in Massachusetts, and that's where we kind of met up there. But interestingly enough, in 2013, when I was a lieutenant of the Massachusetts State Police, we were all instructed to go to an FBI leader course, and I met you there.
I can definitely remember that class. That was one of the most difficult classes I've ever taught in my life.
Yeah,
we were at that location that y'all call a training facility. It's much like a prison.
It was a prison initially. So
yeah, I mean, I can remember the location of. I had to stay about 45 minutes away in a hotel, and then when we got in there, I think all of you guys were voluntold to be in the classroom.
Well, I was going to leave it there, but yeah, exactly right. So
so this was kind of a forced training, if you will. And I think me and Tim Plotz taught that class. And
that's correct. Yeah, it was you and Tim.
Yeah, one of my greatest friends and one of the greatest instructors on the road. If you haven't had a chance to be in the classroom with Tim Plotz, you should. He's a life changer for sure.
He is.
Tim and I went up there, and man, I can remember, just trying to share a little bit. Like, I think one of your guys stood up and basically said, "We're the Massachusetts State Police, and we don't need any training. We're already good enough." I think. Yeah. If I remember
that might be word for word.
So it was a little bit of a tough environment, but I tell you what, by the time we left out there on Friday, man, we were all hugs and kisses, and everybody was happy, and it was one of the best experiences ever. So, I mean, it's kind of a life lesson. Like, yeah, when it starts out a little rough on the first rough edges, man, if you're just committed to make it happen, you can make it happen. So, but
we see it every week on the road here.
Yeah, it's so true. And so, but Dan, I'm so glad to be with you. And let's start getting into the podcast, if you will, a little bit. What we're going to try to do is every new year brings new beginnings for people. and it's almost like we have this natural instinct inside of us when we close the door on one year and we start the year, anew, that we want to make changes or we want to kind of do things better or we desire to be more than we actually were the year before or whatever. And that's in the kind of all areas of our lives. I know I'm like that. I don't know if you share that same sentiment.
Well, you never want to stop, right? You never want to become irrelevant. And as far as leaderships go, leaders, it's said, it's almost a colloquial saying now. Leaders are lifetime learners, and in order to learn, we got to change. We got to learn new things, get out of our comfort zone, and I'm excited for 2026.
Yeah, me too. And I always thinking as I'm getting older, I always think of George Washington's speech to the troops when he was finally the war was over and it was time for him to kind of go and do whatever he was going to do. And I remember he said something. He said that he was long in the tooth and gray in the hair and blind in the eye. And I thought, man, is that not like how life is, right? As you get older. But then George Washington went on to be the president of the United States and became, the father of our country or whatever it was. But although he stopped one chapter, he went full into the other one. That's almost like the new year, though, right? It's like when you're into the new year, you want to kind of start out. And I think what we're going to try to do on this podcast is kind of help people with how do you put yourself on a path to really get better for the new year. And I know this, it's like, if you look at Planet Fitness, right? So let's talk about Planet Fitness. And I go there to work out, and I went the day, New Year's Day, and I promise you, there was not a treadmill to be had, and there was not there was a few of those elliptical things that kill you, but everybody was trying out everything, and I thought, oh my God, this is exactly how people start their new year. They make this commitment to do it. And I went yesterday, and it was like half of those people. And I thought to myself, well, what makes people, lose track or lose focus on where they want to go? And I think number one thing is direction. Like all the people in Planet Fitness, they don't know really, if they're new there, they don't know what to do. So they go in and try whatever everybody does is goes to the treadmill. And then after about 5 minutes on the treadmill, you're tired of that crap. I know I am. When I hit the start button, I'm done. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm like, I want to get off that thing right then. And if I don't know what I'm going to do, man, I get very discouraged. So what we're going to try to do with this new podcast for the year is kind of give people direction. And one of the things I have found in my own personal life, and you can share kind of, Dan, with whatever you think about this, but what I do is if I find a word, like one word that I really adapt or one word that gives me direction, then I kind of adopt that. I'm like, okay, what is that one word that can keep me on track to where I'm trying to go? And we're not trying to tell people the secret to being better this year is finding one word. Right. But what we are trying to say is if you can find that one word or give that direction or kind of give you that focus, then before you know it, you're taking those small steps. And it's not about the giant leap, right? It's about the process-driven, making sure we get focused on that. I want to talk about that a little bit later, but I want your thoughts on that one word kind of concept leading forward.
No, I like that, and especially like starting off with direction, because without it, we're lost. And your example of the gym is classic. By next Monday, I think next Monday or next Friday is called Quit Day, where everybody who joined the gym for 2026 either actually quits or just stops going. And that's because a lot of times I think it's because people say, okay, I have to do this, but they don't know why they have to do it. So their direction is not guided. There's no guardrails to their direction. It's, I'm going to get in shape in 2026, and through osmosis, it's going to happen. It's not. Your direction gives you just that. Now filling in the path, that's where the process comes in, and that's where it's really difficult, not only for the gym, but in leadership as well.
I'd love to be one of those people that drives by Planet Fitness and loses 5 pounds.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that would just be, that's my goal, is just to be one of those people, right? Like I just drive by and hell, I lose 5 pounds, but that ain't going to happen. And if you've noticed, I'm a little nasally today because like since December like 20th, I've been like with everybody else in the country, fighting this little bit of battle. And I'll talk about a lesson I learned in that kind of this morning. It kind of dawned on me. But to be honest with you, success is not a big giant leap. It's a series of very small steps that eventually get you to where you want to get to. So what I'm trying to do is to encourage people in this podcast is, look, don't get discouraged because you don't see instant results tomorrow. You know, here's the nutty thing. Okay, I can go to the gym, I can work out for 10 hours, and I probably will never go back and have no result other than I'm extremely tired, I'm worn out, or whatever. Or I can go 10 days, 1 hour, and that's where you're going to see the results, right? So these words kind of give us direction, and you got to realize executing each one of them at the small steps is what really matters. So I know that we talked a little bit prior to the podcast about developing some words. I've got 3 that I kind of want this year to be my deal. And I think that, you know, I encourage everybody who's out there in podcast land that's listening to us to kind of recognize it's that simple. Find you a good word you can connect to, create small steps out of that word, and I guarantee you in 2 weeks you're going to see a difference. Absolutely guarantee you. I mean, that's just the way it is. So, I mean, it's kind of like that. So, Dan, if you would want to kick off with one of your words, let's kind of go from there, and I'll share mine.
Sure. The first word, and I was thinking about, you know, what we're going to talk about today. The first word for me, especially from a leadership perspective, just as a human being perspective, in interacting with others in the world, is listen. You know, I want to be better.
Listen. Yeah, I mean, I love that.
You know, I know, and a lot of times we'll talk about, you know, you listen to, you know, we as human beings listen to respond, you know, and we should really listen to understand, and we leave it at that. And so I'm like, well, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean to listen, to understand? And how does that manifest itself? We don't really ever go into that. So I'm thinking deeply about that. And the first one I can tell you, Dean, and I go around teaching it, and I do it myself. I'll do it in class once I say it. Interrupt. I will say something and ask a question and interrupt.
Yeah, I think Stephen Covey, when I read 7 Habits Highly Effective People, Stephen, which I would highly recommend as being a read. If you ain't read that book, get it. Like, that's one of those books where you literally need to, during this podcast, go on Amazon and order that book. It's one of the most important books you'll ever read in your life to help you get better, you know. And I remember Stephen Covey said that when we talk and listen, that most of us, we desire to respond. And we desire to respond autobiographically, meaning that we try to listen to your story, then compare our story to your story and tell your story. And you know, it's funny, I always talk about people who do that. I hate one-uppers. And I hope anybody in the stand, everybody in the stands, anybody in the audience out there would understand, you know, my God, a one-upper, that's a person when you tell a story, they got a better one, right? And I got good friends who do that to me, and I always laugh at it, but I think I'm the same. I mean, I don't think that I'm any better, and I love the word listen. God, that's so good.
Yeah, that, you know, again, we can say, well, I know that one-upper, but what type of introspection, and that's for me, the word listen, the introspection on, in class, I will say it, and then I will do it. And now I've got to the point where I tell them, I'm going to do this. Right? so, and then they call me on it, which, you know, in the no BS zone, that, you know, that's the way it goes. So, you know, say something and listen and don't interrupt. You know, from a criminal justice standpoint, when we're interviewing people, you're not supposed to interrupt them. Why are we doing it with our folks? Why are we doing it with the people we interact with every day? So,
you know what I love with cops? This is what I love with cops. And you see this all the time. You go out on a call, right? And you'll have 2 people there, or 3, whatever, and you'll say, tell me what's going on. And when they start talking, you'll be like, shut up. I want to hear from you. It is so true. Like, you interrupt, you're right in the middle of their talking, you'll be like, shut up. I want to hear more from you. All right, now what do you got to say?
Right. And you know, the whole time they weren't listening to one word that came out of the other person's mouth.
I mean, my God, I've done that 1,000 times, I know. So, I mean, I love that word. I think, you know, the best I can add to that is that, you know, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Like, you know,
use them accordingly.
Yeah, use them accordingly. But God, I wish I could do that. I love that word listen. So it's pretty awesome. Anything else you want to say on that?
I go from interrupt to not don't interrupt to a couple other bullets that I thought about. That was one was asking follow-up questions, right? So you and I have a conversation, and there's something still not right about it in my mind, and instead of just walking away and kind of assuming, ask the follow-up question. I think too, when we're talking to folks that are working with or for us, that moves towards authenticity in respect on both ways, that you care about what I'm saying and I care about what you're saying. Let me ask the follow-up question and make sure I just don't go with what I perceive you were saying. And the last one, and I think this is probably the most important one, is validating other people's opinions about issues, even though I don't agree with your conclusion, right? So we can disagree. We can disagree without being disagreeable. And in today's world, I think that is that's currency. Yeah. So you can disagree without being disagreeable. I don't have to hate you because that's extreme. But understanding and validating your perspective, despite the fact that I don't agree with it, right? And then we have the conversation about our differences. And I think if you do that, even if you walk away from the conversation not having agreed, your relationship continues, the trust continues, all of those things that are important to what we do for a living. That is strengthened by the fact that at least I validate your opinion, even though I don't agree with you.
As a police chief, I think the most valuable lesson that I could have learned as a police chief, I went back again and, would do it over, would just be keep your mouth shut and your ears open. Really, because I would interject stuff when I should have just shut up. It's just the reality of it. It is where we're at. So, man, I love that word listen. And I think that is one that is well, well spoken. So, and the one I want to talk about next is the word that, I thought about this year for me personally is accountability. It's just, I think in leadership, there are two things that you're going to be judged by more than anything else. One is your ability to hold people accountable and yourself. And the second thing is your ability to build teams. That is going to be the legacy of your career. Whether you like it or not, that is going to be the legacy. Now, some people look at the word accountability and see harshness. That is not the intent of accountability. Accountability is to get people on the same page moving forward and then giving them guidance to include yourself on what it is you're trying to accomplish, right? So accountability, most people see it as a negative, as being, when you talk about you either discipline somebody or punish somebody. Right. A lot of times people think in the terms of accountability that it has to deal with, you have to have punishment with it. But the reality is it's really more about discipline of trying to get people to follow what you're trying to get them to do. And one of the things that I say about accountability is much easier if the leader knows where they're going. That's the big thing. I tell people directionally, if you understand, philosophically and psychologically where you're going, accountability becomes a natural thing. And it doesn't mean that you have to constantly punish people, but what it does mean is that you stay on track with accountability. And it's like you're doing, and accountability is these series of small steps every single day, right? It's not coming in at the end of the day and say, everybody screwed up, now we're going to do a better job tomorrow. It's when you see those things occur, you kind of lightly put your interaction into that to get people redirected. I'd hate for a pilot to wait till we were getting ready to land in Washington, D.C., and we were actually headed to New York to make the course corrections. That pilot has to make those course directions along the way as the winds go. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, if you wait till you're about ready to land to make those course corrections, you're going to crash. So you got to make them as you're going, right? So most people wait till it gets to a point where it's so bad that you can't fix it. And then the consequences are, do your job or do this. But the reality of accountability is it's like a constant thing. And I think knowing, philosophically what it is you believe in, like trying to be the best version of yourself, trying to make your organization the best versions of itself, and then course correcting those ways gently and lightly and moving forward, I think is the best course of action to me in terms of accountability. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on
Yeah.
that.
The one thing about direction that I have found is that if I'm not consistent in my direction, but still humble enough to know that I may have to course correct left, right, depending on what the situation is, I could direct myself right off a cliff.
Oh,
So the course correction is knowing where you're going, knowing that there has been a change, something you couldn't anticipate, and then getting back on track and how you're going to do that, and making sure that your team understands that's the way that's best for the organization.
yeah, and I think when people think of accountability, I think there's a harshness in that, and everybody thinks, well, I'm just going to make sure everybody does everything perfect. That accountability does not mean perfection, and I think people need to understand that. It's like getting up in the morning and not getting up early enough to go take care of yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever that is. You got to hold yourself accountable for that. You're like, all right, I got to get up earlier, got to go to bed earlier, I got to do whatever. And it's these small steps of things. So I think this year brings a great deal of opportunity to really work on these kind of words, and so what's your next word?
My next word is develop. Both personally, professionally, as a husband, as a business owner, but as it relates to as a leader, transitioning from doing to coaching. And I think when you're going to develop someone, and you get these wonderful opportunities to be in a leadership position, and you're going to be able to develop someone, you have to understand that it's now time to transition from doing to coaching. And I think, especially for young people, younger leaders, that's the toughest part, because they enjoy the profession so much, especially for cops, right? But we love the running and gunning and all that. And when you become a supervisor, there's other things you got to be thinking about. And so developing your folks, that all goes to the professional maturity of the people you're dealing with. So transitioning from doing to coaching, I think is big for me.
I think one of the biggest developmental kind of phases that people go through, and I always talk about there's three kinds of, organizational leaders. There are managers, there's leaders, and then there's bosses.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest steps that people make is going from managing to leading. And what a lot of people don't understand is that most organizations, now I'm going to throw this out there, and I know people are going to hesitate when I say this, and they're going to be like, that's not really true. But I want you to just think about it for a minute. I'd say 99.9% of the organizations I've had the opportunity to work with, teach in, be around, or whatever, promote people to positions of managers, not leaders. And the reason I say that is because that when you're a manager, the process of the organization is the most important thing. And I think that's true in every organization. It has to be. People think people are, but the reality is the process ensures legacy. It ensures continuity. When people leave, the process creates the next people to take over. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I think that what a lot of people don't realize is going from a manager to a leader is a conscious step now to step up your game, and you actually have to develop between those phases. And people don't really realize that. They're like, well, just one day I'll be a leader, or one day I'll figure it out. But the reality is, this is my personal opinion, is that when you get into a position of management and you stay long enough, you have consciously made the decision to be a leader, whether you agree with it or not, or whether you act like it or not, because people expect you now to lead them, not to just manage them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the policy. If your first thought always is policy, what was the policy? What was the policy? And it doesn't reflect your thought process. It doesn't reflect on how is this going to affect the people that I'm dealing with. That's one thing. If your thought process is how is it going to affect the people, and the organizational policy, be damned, it's equally as troubling. So the balance there, being able to manage and being able to lead, and I really like John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership when he talks about positional leader. Anybody can be a positional leader. and people do things because they have to do them. They do things for you because they have to. But just that one next step, up to permission, and that might be that transition from management to leader.
Yeah, and I think I think you do that, and I think the important factor of that is that. So let's give you I'll give you an example of manager versus leader. Mm-hmm. So you have a person who says to you, "I need next week off because I've got da 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 going on." Well, if next week is going to put a big burden on everybody, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems, then the manager's absolute decision is no, you can't. But the leader finds a way to serve organizational purpose and personal purpose, right? So that's the step where you become like a leader, whether you admit to it or not, So it's like when you make those decisions, it's very important to realize it's hard to do one without the other, but going from manager to leader is a conscious decision. People don't realize that. I mean, it really is. So
that comes with, you think it comes with a lot with experience, though. And I think it's almost unfair to expect a brand new boss, a brand new supervisor, not to lean heavy on the policy and the procedure, because that's number one what they're studying for when they take the test, and then that's what they've seen, and so it's really your self-improvement needs to be. I need to do that as the boss. I need to say, okay, I got the policy, I got the procedure. I need to work on the people part.
I think experience softens the blow of leader decisions.
Okay.
I think that the more experience you get, the more you know the consequence of your decision, and it softens the blow. And I think that's what experience does for us, is it kind of gives us, we know we got to do it, but is there a better way to do it where everybody's happy? That. And the more experience you get with that, the easier that becomes. I've seen that in my life.
Well, you're talking about direction. That's like taking a new road somewhere, right? The first time you take the new road, you're really not sure where you're going. Especially now you're taking the new road at night. But the more you take that road, the more comfortable you become with that direction and with that, we're getting from point A to point B. And experience will do that for you for leadership as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's it's so key, right? And I think that develop is a great word, and I think that's something that people can look at, your own personal and professional and life development. And one of the things about life is, whether you believe it or not, you're going to evolve. You might not evolve into what you want to be, but the way I think directed growth creates directed evolution. You know what I mean? Like when you direct your growth, then you tend to evolve in the direction you're growing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anyway. All right, with that being said, so I'm going to use my second word here, and we've been going about 35 minutes here, and so mine is going to be momentum. Like, I think a lot of people get confused about the difference, or they don't get confused, but they get overly dependent on motivation. And people who become overly dependent on motivation tend to think that is their main job as a leader. But to be honest with what I have found is that I don't need to motivate my people. I need to create a self-drive in them where they motivate themselves. And when you have to constantly motivate people, momentum is constantly interrupted. Like it goes every day with the mood of the day, right? So if they come in a bad mood, then the momentum kind of slows or it stops, And I think if we want to be successful at LHLN, and if we want to be successful in the classroom, we don't want motivational interruptions during the week. So think about it. When we go in there and teach day one, we want to create a momentum that goes into day two, that then goes into day 3, 4, 5. And when you do that, you see that particularly in the 5-day class of the Master Leader, you see such a momentum going towards teamwork that by the end of the week, everybody don't want to leave.
That's right.
I mean, and what really is it? On Monday, I got to motivate them. But by Tuesday and Wednesday, now they create their own self-drive that creates the momentum of the classroom. And when you do that, man, you're very successful. It's exactly the same thing. Like in law enforcement, the way I can compare it is building a case. You build a momentum to the result you're going to get. And, that's what happens a lot of times when you get a false suspect or somebody that's not really the person. You build a lot of momentum towards them, and then your test finds out they're not it, And now what do you do?
All right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because you're motivated, but you got to remember the momentum is created in the right outcome for the case, not your outcome.
Right. You'll see that a lot in interviews, especially if you're doing a major case interview, and I'm having a conversation with the subject, and we're getting, the momentum towards confession is coming, and then somebody jumps in with a question out of nowhere. Talk about a momentum breaker.
Oh my God.
And we don't ever want to block that positive momentum either in the classroom, in a case, or in life. It's a commitment to it. For sure. I love the class. When the class will get go, the class kind of almost takes over itself.
That's
and then I'm more of a doorstop if I jump in, right? So when you name the company Leaders Helping Leaders Network for a reason, right? Everybody in that room is helping everybody in that room, and so I really enjoy watching that momentum build over the days. And you're right, in that 5-day class, sometimes it's like, hey, we got to shut the lights off, guys. We got to go.
I mean, it's true. Like I've ended a class at 11 o'clock in the morning, and 1 o'clock we're still not gone.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing.
Really. It is crazy, but I mean that's momentum, right? And that's the thing you want to build in your teams too, is that momentum. And you want to build that positive where every day we're making progress. It might not be a giant step, but it's in the direction of where we're going to go, And I tell people in my leadership, my whole life, I've said, it's not the size of the step, it's the direction it's in that matters, right? And so you got to keep that momentum kind of thing going. And I think this year, and you got the perfect time, this is the first week of the year, you're just back, create that positive momentum. And the way you do that is you form habits of what your behavior is. It was like, I told you I'd been a little bit sick, and I had these antibiotics I had to take because I needed them. And so I started taking the antibiotics, and I noticed I'm just off of them. So I noticed this morning I'd been doing it for 7 days, right? So I actually went to the kitchen to take them, although I'm out. Why? Because habit, momentum.
Yep.
Right? And that's how, I promise you, 7 days in the gym will create momentum. The only thing you got to do is get up the 8th one.
Right.
And then if you miss the 8th one, don't miss twice. So my kind of advice to people in terms of momentum, don't miss twice. If you miss once, okay, I got it. But don't miss twice. And if you miss twice, then you create momentum into the area direction you want to go. Yeah, it's life's a series of momentums, and so keep the positive momentum going, and I think that's kind of where we're at. Well, Dan, I think we've kind of done what we wanted to do this morning.
This is great.
We talked about some words, and you want to have some closing thoughts before I get us out of here?
I really appreciate being on the podcast. I've wanted to for a long time, and this has been a great experience. Anytime we get to sit and talk about leadership and how we can better ourselves, better our organization, and really better our people, I'm all on board for that. So I hope you bring me back.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd love to have you as a regular guest, and you do a great job on here. You reading anything anybody wants to read out there?
Yeah. So Jeff Perry, detective lieutenant, now in charge of a homicide unit. He worked for me for years. Wonderful, wonderful kid, and he just stopped me in the parking lot when I saw him last time, and he handed me this book. It's called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and I'm like,
Patrick Lencioni.
Yes, I'm like, 5 dysfunctions. Like, what do I know about the dysfunctions? Of course, then I read it, and I'm like, oh, like right straight on. And then you talked about Covey's book. I listened. I can't read that because I'll fall asleep 4 minutes into it, but I listen to it once a week.
Yeah, I mean, that's good stuff.
It's just tremendous.
And that Patrick Lencioni book is a good book. He's got several others, but that one, he talks about absent of trust of turns to dysfunctions.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's worth just reading that, and I'm reading a great book, and I think that people really ought to get this one. It's mine.
I thought about reading that myself.
For people who can't see this, they're actually on the podcast. I just held up a copy of my new book, Five Simple Truths of Leadership, and we all had a good laugh at that. But God, that's such a good book. I've been reading over the Christmas holidays. I read The Splendid and the Vile about Winston Churchill during the Blitzkrieg and all the things they had to deal with. And, stuff like that intrigues me too. It's written by Eric Larson. It's a great book. If I could give you a 4-letter word that would change your life, would you want it?
Absolutely.
The word's read. That's it.
Roger
4-letter word, change your life, read. READ. Simple. It took me from a person who barely graduated high school to a person that was very lowly educated to basically it changed my life, being able to just focus and read and not having the ability to do it. But it will change your life. So, Dan, I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
For joining the podcast. It's been an honor and a privilege. It always is. If you haven't had Dan Richard in a class, man, you're missing something. He's special. He's got such a way in the classroom. He's so good at connecting with people, and he's just an awesome leader. Dan, thank you so much, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
Folks, thanks for joining us on our 145th podcast. It's amazing. This starts the new year off. I'd like to thank our producer, Abby Folger, who is sitting back. Monique Chicos, thank you for all you're doing as our new operations director. Kim, thank you for making sure all the bills get paid. And I want to thank Mac Marsh, our instructor. Thank you, Mac, for all you do. Dan, you guys kill it in the classroom. JP Harvey, thank you for all you do as an instructor. So with that being said, folks, until next time, I'm Dean Crisp.
You've been listening to Straight Talk on Leadership with Dean Crisp. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share your favorite podcast. And if you get a chance, leave us a review. It helps us reach more leaders. Learn more about Dean, his books, our classes, and the Significant Leader Program at lhln.org. Until next time, put your leadership into action every day.